you're implying that you're so wise and intelligent that you know what this other person wants, and you're going to decide on their behalf for them what they want and what they don't want. That requires an incredible amount of hubris to assume that level of knowledge about someone else that you may have never met.
Humans inherently want to be meaningful. They want to contribute to their communities. They want to contribute to society. When you look at depression rates, oftentimes it's people who aren't able to do anything besides laying in their bed and basically barely taking care of themselves.
Okay, so you know why this bugs me. Talked about this before, and psychiatry is to blame largely for promoting this way of thinking, which is that to turn something like depression into this entity that acts upon people, just somehow captures them or paralyzes them and deprives them of agency. This is an extremely poisonous idea and can enable a helplessness that the gentleman describes. If we're going to assume that one's limbs are functional, one is not physically disabled or incapacitated or paralyzed, then there is the capacity to move. You might not want to get out of bed, but do you have to want to do something to do it? And if you don't want to do it, and then you choose not to do it because you don't want to do it, okay. We can explore why that is. But to just explain it away as, well, depression prevented me from doing it, doesn't really explain anything.
I've applied to, I don't know how many hundreds of jobs. I can show you the receipts. I can show you the email confirmations. Like, I am trying my best to use my values with the freedom that we have
So
here.
if I gave you a job, you would work 40 hours a week?
If the job is in alignment with something that's noble and good, I think I could.
So this is something that happens multiple times during this episode, where Bet David actually offers people jobs. They claim they're struggling, or they're not making ends meet, or they're not happy, contented with their job situation. And he literally offers them a job. Instead of leaping at the opportunity, they provide all these caveats. Well, if it was in alignment with my values, etc. People are free to choose poverty to, preserve their integrity. They're free to do that. But they can't then claim that the opportunities are not there. They just apparently don't conform to their values. But you're the one choosing to make that a requirement.
How about we do this? How about I interview and I give you a job? Would
Sure.
you move to Fort Lauderdale?
Ooh, man, that's Florida. Sure, why not?
Would you move to Fort Lauderdale?
Sure, why not?
How about you and I document this? After this, you come, I do an interview with you, and I give you a job. And let's see what you do 90 days later.
Okay, and I'll look up your company and all that kind of stuff, and I'll see it.
But you see what just happened
regardless,
right there? But
Mike,
watch what you just did.
Sure.
You just said you applied to 477 companies who's not gotten back to you.
Yeah.
A business owner who's hiring aggressively just made an offer to you. You said you're willing to move. Then you said, I'll look at it. You became selective.
I didn't
You
say I look at it if you'd
yourself.
let me finish my sentence.
Go ahead. I want to hear it.
I would like to look into your company to
Yeah.
see exactly what you guys do.
You would like to...
Because I don't know what you guys do.
Okay.
So as far as I'm concerned, I may be wasting my time going. If you guys are a finance company, if you guys are a bank or something like that, I don't have the certifications, I don't have the degrees. So even interviewing me would be a moot
What if I
point.
gave you a job, period, to work 80 hours a week? Would you take it? And I paid you a reasonable wage.
Are we talking a livable wage or a reasonable wage?
What do
and
you make
whose
right
version
now?
of reasonable are we
What do you
talking
make
about?
right
Your
now?
version of reasonable or my version of
But you
reasonable?
see, so
This guy is basically wanting to do a bunch of research to try and disqualify himself before Bet David has actually had the opportunity to decide that for himself. This is not something that's exclusive to job searches either. People do this in dating all the time. Men do this when they contemplate approaching a woman. they invent narratives in their head as to why they're not a good fit. You're implying that you're so wise and intelligent that you know what this other person wants, and you're going to decide on their behalf for them what they want and what they don't want. That requires an incredible amount of hubris to assume that level of knowledge about someone else that you may have never met. Is it not more respectful to simply allow the other person, whether it's a potential employer, potential date, to be exposed to you and decide for themselves versus you deciding for them? But David, he notices this friction occurring. And credit to him, he calls it out in the moment. And he does a kind of meta-communication, which is a pretentious word that I've referenced before from a book called Pragmatics. You can watch those videos about that. Where you're communicating about what's happening in the interaction as it's happening, going this layer up. And he describes his experience in the moment. You know, I'm getting a lot of friction and resistance here, even though I've just basically offered you this lifeline that you seem to imply that you want after having searched long and hard and not found what you're looking for. In therapy, we have this saying, people tell you the problem or they show you the problem. This is him showing David the problem, or at least one potential problem, which is that there's too much rigidity here. It's 1 or 0, black or white, one way or no way at all. So he's got in his mind that, well, people only get hired if they fit the job description to a T. Why?
Somebody you and I look up to will say something to us that we choose to believe for the rest of our lives. Unfortunately, it could be something where you have ADHD, you're mentally ill, you're poor, you're this, you're that, and we get to choose to buy into that or not. And if you do...
So you're saying I'm not mentally ill or I'm not disabled?
I'm not saying you are or you're not. I would challenge it to go a little bit deeper to see if there's anything you can do about it.
So you're asking me about my health. You're asking me about my disability.
I'm not.
And my...
I will say we are in a market where, stay with me here, there is a market where there's profit to convince you that you have issues to take the medication because they're making money.
Yeah, but I don't have
not
access to the
of
medication. I don't have access to even a result or a solution to my disability as someone with a connective tissue disorder. It's genetic.
Have you been able to go to different doctors and get yourself tested? And
Yeah.
see? You have?
Yes.
And in California?
Yes, but not
And
enough.
who paid
I can't
for it?
find a specialist.
You can't find a specialist?
I can't find a specialist
Is there
for who I
anyone in your
am.
life that's
I
willing to
can't
pay
find
for a
anyone.
specialist?
Well, they could they would if they had money.
Anybody
But yeah.
Would you be okay if I pay for a specialist for you to go see?
Yeah.
Would you take money from a capitalist to help you go see specialist?
I mean, yeah, sure, why not?
I'm going to have you go see two. Where do you live in California?
Yeah.
I'm going to have you go see 2 specialists. But would you also be open to seeing somebody else I choose as a psychologist that may...
No.
You're not.
No.
So you simply...
choose as a psychologist. You're choosing who gets to determine what my mental health looks like. No.
But David, as with others, gives her an offer. Says, I'll literally pay for you to see these specialists you claim that you can't find. Just with the caveat that, do you want to also see a psychologist? And she just refuses. This is a theme that shows up over and over again in this episode, that there are people complaining about their circumstances. And Bet David offers them a help in some way, a lifeline, job opportunity or money to move forward. And they just refuse. And this is why I'm so against any kind of involuntary version of therapy. Because it's hard enough to help people when they choose, when they volunteer
Some people are so far off from that point, they're so far in debt that small decisions would not alter.
It's not true.
Yes, absolutely.
It's not true.
You're just privileged and you've lived in a certain
You think
example.
I'm privileged. I'm
Yes,
privileged.
you're privileged to become a millionaire because of your hard work. That's amazing. That's the
my
only
mom
person.
ran out of money and went back to Iran. You're talking to a guy that would have done 20 years in the army. If one guy doesn't call me, if one guy would have called me
the army is the government funding you.
I understand that, and I joined the army because I had given up on life.
Social programs.
No, I had
absolutely.
I was not confident on what I could do, but I changed. So can you. Look at the way you're speaking to me.
You can change. You can work hard, but
do you know somebody like you? Do you know somebody like you that speaks this eloquently? If somebody gets a hold of you in real estate, insurance, finance, you can learn how to sell, and you can make some real good money. Somebody like you that I'm watching.
Not everybody's born with those abilities. You have to be,
brother.
Somebody who's white, tall, 6'4", whatever. They're
I'm
much
Middle
more
Eastern. I'm from Iran. Do you realize a lot of stuff that goes against me?
Okay, but many people have no choice to
But
physically
that's an
alter.
excuse language to be making.
Another example of the black and white thinking, using these words like never, no chances, no choices. This language is just poison. Reminds me of one of the first videos I made where I distinguished what's true and what's useful when you're determining a way of thinking or whether to believe something. I also referenced this Nassim Taleb quote, which I'll paraphrase again, where he says, do you want to be right or do you want to win? And so many of these people, including this guy in this clip from this episode, they're fixated on being right more than they're focused on winning. Again, there are reasons why these people think this way. It's a lot of it comes down to a kind of transference that, again, I can't speculate onto the precise origins of because I don't know these people's history. But if you succumb to these ways of thinking, this rigidity, black and white thinking, fixation on what's true versus what's useful, and the disease model of mental illness, psychiatric model, something acting upon you versus something you can influence, all this stuff is potentially an impediment to you being able to do what's within your control to better your life. Whatever you think about David, his life, his belief system, how he made his money, it's largely irrelevant. But his appearance here demonstrated some very common limitations that I see in therapy all the time that just keep people stuck. And it's of your own making. That is something you can actually control, the way you think. That's where arguably you have the most power. So if that stuff is flawed, you're making it harder than it needs to be.